Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in for another edition of Hudson County Review Live. I am your host, who is internationally known and locally respected, John R. Hydus, and today we're once again joined with our Jersey City Board of Education President, Sudhan Thomas. Sudhan, thanks for coming back.
Hey, John. Thank you for having me over here again.
You're welcome.
Summer day.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's a nice little break in the holiday season here. So obviously there's a whole lot of stuff going on at the board. I mean, it's hard to just pick one place to start, really. But I guess let's start with the school funding. So obviously it looked like we were about to have another government shutdown and trade. The 11th hour, there was an agreement between the Senate President, the Assembly Speaker, and our governor. Unfortunately, though, for Jersey City, this is a tremendous budget shortfall. We're talking about a $150 million cut in the next 7 years. So obviously that's not what you were hoping for. And but it's fair to say layoffs are inevitable, right?
At this point, I think my first reaction is I'm extremely disappointed with this proposal which has passed. This is anti-constitutional, and it robs us of the ability to extend thorough and efficient education, which is constitutionally mandated in the state of New Jersey. And I'm extremely disappointed. I'm actually disgusted with what's happened here. And I think as a board, we need to come together to take stock of what this means to us and what it means to Jersey City, and the ability for Jersey City to continue to extend thorough and efficient education to our 30,000 students, which is severely undermined and threatened by this move, which is a draconian move. $150 million, John, is about 25% of our district, and that's a lot. So we're taking stock of the situation. You know, obviously we're still waiting for final letters to come in, communications to come in from the state BOE to try and see what this means to us and what the impact would be. But at this point, I am disgusted and disappointed, and I have been very vocal in every forum that we will take avenues, everything that's available, legal, legislative, advocacy, to counter this measure. And remember, the most important thing is, at this point, Jersey City is already underfunded by $3,300 per student, which means we're already running at $110 million less than what we should be having. So you add this 150 on top, that's $260 million. That's almost 33, 35, 37% of the district that's being pulled under our feet. This is Armageddon. This is very, very bad, and we need to deal with this head on, which we will.
That's obviously big money, and that seems like it would have a monumental impact. So aside from layoffs, I mean, what else can be done? I mean, I know you talked about lobbying within the district and beyond, but what kind of measures can you do to make up that kind of a hit?
Well, at this point, I'm not saying yes to layoffs as yet. That's something which you said that is inevitable. But we obviously have to look at different ways in which we can, skin this cat. The good thing is that in the first year, the impact of this is limited to $3.5 million. And then the way it breaks out, there's an incremental, the agony builds up.
Yes.
And then, by the time they get you in full and they cut you under your feet, it's about 6 years. But we need to plan for that.
Sure.
So the first impact is $3.5 million. Now, remember last year's budget when they cut $8.3 million, and I was the only board member who voted against it. And I said, guys, don't do this. Don't vote for this. Don't accept it, because they'll stiff you with another bigger cut. I would have loved to be wrong about this, because I never thought the bigger cut would be $150 million.
Yeah.
So, this is where we are at this point of time. But we have to take stock of the situation. And if you look, going back to our own budget, the district administration's proposal to us was to lay off like 450 employees. That was their proposal. We said no as a board. We said we want to see different ideas, and we asked for different ways in which we could balance that budget, which had a $70 million deficit. And I think collectively the district did a good job, and we passed that budget with 0 layoffs. Now, what does this mean? That means there are ways and means in which we can cut costs and manage to run this operation without really impacting day-to-day operations, which is what we just proved in this budget. A lot of folks don't like to say that, but that's the reality. When you look back at the numbers, 4.5, 5 years ago, this district had a cash fund balance of $59 million. So just look at the math. 4.5, 5 years ago, we had $59 million in our fund balance. Today, 4 years later, we have a $70 million deficit and $200,000 in the fund balance, which means this district has gone from...
The fund balance, that's like a surplus?
That's a surplus. Yeah. So this, hypothetically speaking, in layman's terms, we went from a plus $59 million to a minus $130 million. in 4 years' time. Now, people will blame flat funding, people will blame high cost of insurance, but people don't acknowledge the fact that something also happened in the last 4 years, which was Chapter 78 came in. So while the insurance premiums are going up, we were collecting 20% from the employees, which was not there earlier. So there was a revenue item that kicked in as well, which somewhat offset the cost of insurance. So how much that really hit into our cash flow, that's something that we need to determine. So there is obviously an operational issue that we need to look into this district, which is the reason why some of us as board members have been very committed to what we called as a operations efficiency audit, which the people of Jersey City call as a forensic audit, which is, after 12 months of hard work, is currently now in the first steps of implementation. The first few days of work has begun, and it's a thorough efficiency audit to see, to review the different aspects of workings of the district, and we try to see where we can, optimize our spending and cut costs and, cut the waste.
So there's a lot of money, of course, a lot of moving parts. I mean,
yes.
What do you anticipate, your educated guess on how long it'll take to get the audit complete and, get a chance to review the results?
It took us 12 months to get here, to just get the audit started, because, there was a lot of resistance to this audit, internally and externally. Exactly 8 days after the board passed a resolution last year on June 15th to create a school board committee to, explore this potential forensic audit, there were former board members looking up personal records of current board members to try and see how they could decap this agenda. And these are things which I have shared with you off the record. So while we want to go into figuring out what's going on, we also want to find out what was the reason for such a concerted effort to prevent this operations efficiency audit, forensic audit, whatever you want to call it, from starting. To answer your question, how long will it take the light of the day? I don't know, because this is an elaborate exercise. Such an effort has never been attempted in other school districts. So we are actually trying to audit every department. And so it's probably, I would say, first, we've, as a board, I think, shortlisted a small first brief or like a phase 1. We hope to see some initial results, but we're asking for a monthly report, which will be shared with the public at the monthly board meetings. And so this is something which will move with time, it will be a work in progress.
Okay, well, hopefully that's something we get to hear more about, like you just said, as the months go on, but hopefully we get a more complete picture by the end of the year. But
yes.
Let's see. So, going back to what you were saying about the insurance and the Chapter 78, some of the teachers in the district were a little miffed, a little upset about the fact that you guys switched insurance providers. They said some of their medical practitioners wouldn't accept that insurance. Now, obviously, from your perspective, I understand you wanted to save money, but they felt, some of them said to me they felt kind of blindsided and they disagreed with the moves. What was your take on this whole switch?
So, I agree with the fact that, and I apologize repeatedly in every possible forum for the angst and for the for the stress that was caused during this transition. This is what happened. As a board, we saw that one of the biggest cost items was insurance, because it was increasing every year 10%, and we had no way to deal with it because we could not control that cost factor being increased every year because somebody else was managing that relationship. We didn't have a relationship with the vendor, with the guy who was providing the insurance. The state plan was managing that. So we were basically getting what they deemed fit. We were not bidding, we were not having any review, oversight, nothing. We were basically dealing with what we have. Now, normally, any vendor, whether he's supplying school books to the district or he's supplying paint, the board has some oversight. We are putting out a bid, we're looking at the responses. In the case of the insurance, we have nothing because somebody else is making that decision and telling us, this is what you got to deal with.
It's a state decision.
Yeah, and the state plan decision. So we were not very happy with that situation, and year on year, the premium is increasing by 10%. And because of the way the mechanics of Chapter 78 works, the salary increases were being gobbled up or cannibalized by the insurance premium increases on account of 78.
So it was a percentage of your salary.
Yeah.
So 20% still 20% or whatever it is.
Yeah. So it's almost like you get penalized when you get a raise. Mm-hmm. When you go from $70,000 to $80,000, you went up to a higher bracket. So you no longer are paying 22%. You may be paying 26%. So it's like I got a raise, but I also have to pay 4% more premium. So my raise got cancelled out by my Chapter 78 increase. So that was the reason for the angst for the teachers. Now, when we were trying to do the negotiation, we were trying to see if there's any way to give Chapter 78 relief. We couldn't, because we couldn't peg the cost. We are not in charge of, finalizing the cost. So we couldn't fight that battle at that time. But when we got the budget and we saw that we had a $70 million deficit, we wanted to explore possibilities with which we could potentially manage those costs. And now, across New Jersey, school boards are moving out of the state plan because of the same reasons that I told you. We have no way of controlling this.
What other districts that you know off the top of your head have taken this initiative?
I know Patterson went out very recently. I think Irvington went out recently.
Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of urban districts.
Yeah, and Horizon, who is the company that we ultimately decided to do business with, they have given in their testimonies to us that they moved 50 municipalities or public sector units just in the last 15 months from state plans to direct insurance or self-insurance. So obviously we are not the first one to get on this train, but we are a large district. So when we do these things, the impact is very huge and the visibility is very high.
Yes.
But just to give you a little bit of history, many years ago there was one state plan which covered the entire state. Whether you're a cop, you're a firefighter, or you're a teacher, you're all covered under one plan.
Public employee.
Public employees. At some point, a couple of years ago, that plan got divided into two plans. Public employees or state employees fund and state education employees fund. The state employees fund was managed by the cops and the firefighters, and the state school employees fund was managed by the education employees. The cops and the firefighters did a great job. They managed their plan. They negotiated with Blue Cross, which was the vendor, and Aetna, and they kept their plans increased only by 5% every year. In the case of the school employees fund, they obviously didn't do a good job because the plans have been growing by 10 and 13%. And the state's fix to that is, the answer is, go ahead and collect tax from your middle class people to assuage for that increase in cost. And of course, Chapter 78 was another fix to that problem. And that I think it's living in fool's paradise. And that's why we decided to go out. But what happened in our school district was unpardonable, because on April 18th when May 18th at the board meeting, when I walked into the board meeting at 6 o'clock, I was given a resolution by the district administration appointing Homestead, the company, as the vendor to which would be the primary insurance carrier. I've never seen that insurance before, resolution before. At 6 o'clock when I walked into Snyder, the administration gave me that resolution.
So it was a last minute add-on resolution.
Yeah, yes. Appointing Homestead, signing a LOI, giving them a $125,000 check, and allowing the business administrator and the general counsel to negotiate the contract. I said, no way I'm signing off on this resolution. I'm not bringing this resolution to the floor. So if you go back and see the camera on that day, from 6 to 7:30, I didn't sit in the president's chair. I get a lot of flack for walking around. But what I did by walking around that day was I actually saved the healthcare plan and the lives of 4,000 of our employees. Because if I didn't dig in that day, and if I didn't fight with the district administration and say, there's no way I'm putting that resolution, the only thing that I'll be willing to do is to allow a resolution that will start enrollment and spousal or dependent verification, but not committing to appointment of a company. If I didn't do that, John, we would have given the house away, we would have appointed Homestead. Now, 3 days later, when the superintendent of schools sent out a link to the various employees saying, check your doctor, they sent the link which Homestead had given, which was a list of providers, and nobody could find their doctors.
Right.
Now, if I didn't fight that day for an hour and a half, amidst where I was threatened, and I was said that if you don't put this, there's going to be a federal investigation, there's going to be this and that and all of that stuff, I didn't back down. I said, you can do all the threats. I've heard about these stories of the board members being threatened with a lot of things in the past. You know what? Count me out of that. I'm not. I've been threatened enough in my life, so I'm not going to fall for these threats. I saved the day along with Vice President Richardson that night. If not, the health care and insurance of 4,000 employees of our district and their families would have gone to a company where no doctor was listed in the plan, and this would have been chaos.
So as of today, just to be 100% clear, as of today, the provider still has not changed.
No. So in the next 2 weeks, we dug in. We got in contact with Blue Cross, which, Horizon is a very difficult company to work with. They're extremely arrogant and haughty. Okay? And I think my personal view is that this company, it's monopoly. I mean, they just have too many control of too many moving parts of this industry. And I think at some point the state has to look to see if they want to break up this company, because they have their hands in too many things. But that's just my personal opinion. But dealing with Horizon was very tough. But we got them back to the table, and we were able to move them from their original proposal of $106 million to cover the insurance to finally $79 million attachment point. And that's what saved the day. So eventually we moved from state plan to self-insurance with Blue Cross as continuing to remain as the primary provider or the insurance carrier. And we were able to freeze the attachment point at $79 million, which is about $12 million less than what would have been the cost otherwise. So that's the saving for us. Could this transition have been better managed? Yes, absolutely it could have been better managed. But this is a big district. This is the first time we were doing it. And remember, the clock started on May 18th when the administration wanted to appoint Homestead. So it was almost like the clock started from there to get Blue Cross back in the table and get them to start negotiating different points for them. So this was it was an absolute mess, but we had to put in a lot of time. And at the end of the day, the good news for the employees is that Horizon Blue Cross, which has been the insurance carrier for so many years in our district, continues to be the carrier. The exact same plans in the state plan, as per the commitment, are being matched to the new environment of self-insurance. So it's a win-win for everybody. And in January, when the state plan is projected to go up by 15%, our plan rates won't go up, which means our employees, normally in January, they see their Chapter 78 premium rates go up. They won't see that cut happening. So
just a quick follow-up. So did you ever hear back from the administration or anybody at all as to why Homestead was the preference?
The Homestead's reference-based pricing model, it's a new kind of a thing in insurance, and it promises a lot of savings. Okay, this is a model that I can personally, it's very exciting, but I don't think we can put 4,000 of our employees through a test model at this point. So what we have done now is we have appointed Homestead as a secondary provider. We have given the option to employees. Those who want to choose Homestead, they can choose it. So there are people out there choosing Homestead, and we can see how the mechanics work. We also got a lot of concessions from Horizon. Normally they don't allow you to negotiate discounts from service providers because they make money out of that. So we got a break from them, and they said if we can negotiate discounts with our large service providers, we can get back checks which will bring down our healthcare costs. The out-of-network costs was pegged at 90% or about 175% above Medicare costs. We negotiated with Horizon and we were able to bring it down to 125. So there's a lot of small savings here and there that we've been able to bring into the whole thing, where we are actually beginning to control our healthcare expenses. But this is a small first step. We'll learn through the next 12 months, and at the end of 12 months, we'll be able to gather the learnings of this year and make a better, savings pitch next year. The key thing is, we have not had a system which gave options to our employees and said, hey, these are the 15 plans, you choose for what is your situation in life, you choose what is best. For instance, we have 1,100 single employees. Do 1,100 single employees really need to have a Cadillac Direct 10 program, healthcare plan with the highest premium and the highest copay? Or given their health situation, and their needs, can they choose or opt to have a lower plan where they can ultimately make more money? That education has never happened in this district because somebody has made a decision that everybody should be on Direct 10. Now, who's paying for the Direct 10? It's the taxpayers who are paying for Direct 10. The taxpayers are paying for a Cadillac plan for 4,000 employees, but the question is, did that employee make that decision? Who made that decision? Is that employee making the decision, or is somebody else making that decision? That's the key piece. And I've spent hours and I've spoken to hundreds of our employees, and I've seen some employees who've said, no, I've been on Direct 20, I've been on Direct 15 because I don't need to pay Direct 10. So we want to expand that pool of people who will make a conscious choice as to what they want to have, so that it has two effects. One, our healthcare bill comes down. Second, they end up making more money. This is an artificial situation that has been created because everybody is having it's like bringing a bulldozer to mow a lawn. You don't need that, So that's what we are working closely with the business administrator. We want to have these what is called as wellness camps, where employees are given choices and they can make the choice as to what they want to have. You have 18 plans or 8 plans. Let them choose what they want to have. You don't have to push everybody into one plan, which ends up being expensive for the district and expensive for the employees. That's part of the problem as well.
All right, well, looks like you guys are moving right along, so let's see what happens in the coming months. So, sticking with the subject of cost saving, 1 week ago today, as you're well aware, there was a special meeting and some people were laid off on 48 hours notice, including the chief counsel, corporation counsel for the district, human resources director, and others. It was 8 in total, and I believe it was 15 or 16 employees got riced. So, obviously, some people don't agree with the decision. They say that's, practically no notice, and that's not how the public sector works. While others said, those people had bloated salaries and we don't know what they were doing there anyway. I obviously know what your personal opinion is, but what do you, looking back on it a week later, do you still feel like this was the right move?
So, a couple of things, John. This is not a layoff. This is a couple of folks whose jobs were not renewed. Layoff is when you send somebody home because their position is no longer warranted, or you don't have the money to pay for them, or the work is not there. But this is a non-renewal, and part of the resolution is directing the superintendent to refill those positions with the right, people.
Okay.
Now, the problem that we had here is that we had a bunch of folks here. According to what I'm being told from the attorney's report that we got, that there were positions filled with people who were non-certificated, or positions filled with the wrong titles, or salaries being paid way above the positions, and that is something that we need to correct that position. So that's basically what happened on that day. And that was it was unfortunate, and the superintendent herself said that this was her mistake. For 3.5 years we had a situation where these guys were not put up for renewal, which they should have put up, and this was badly timed and badly planned. And the question is, what have the board done for 3.5 years? Why hasn't boards 3.5 years ago, 2.5 years ago, asked the question to the superintendent? What was the mechanics for these 18 people to be employed in the district? Who are these guys? What are their titles? Who approved their titles? Who approved their salaries? The board has been a silent piece in this whole situation, and that's the problem.
Gotcha. So, obviously, again, some people supported it, some people don't. But I don't know. What kind of feedback are you getting a week later here?
I think the people of Jersey City have been very publicly and vocally supportive of this, because a lot of folks, you can fool some of the people some of the time, you cannot fool all of the people all of the time, and the chickens have come home to roost here, so the comments, the emails, the text messages, it's been just unbelievable, and people saying, we knew this happened 5 years ago, we talked about this 6 years ago, board members were told, they didn't act. And I've been amazed to see the positive responses and people sharing information. The amount of information that has come in the last 10 days, it's just mind-boggling, And I think the general sense is that the people are supportive of what happened last Friday. Now, things could have been done better. Technically, the superintendent should have given those guys 60 days notice, or however the mechanics work, saying that in 60 days your job will be considered for renewal or non-renewal. That didn't happen, and the superintendent herself is on the record admitting that this was her fault. That not only that she didn't do that, but she's not done that for 3.5 years. But I don't blame the superintendent alone. I question the board members. For 3.5 years, the board was absent. They didn't act as a board, clearly. Not just in this, but many other things, which is very upsetting for me. But board presidents, board vice presidents, board members who've been there for the last 3.5 years, not one board member who stepped up and asked a question. What is the mechanics for hiring these guys? What is the mechanics for the continued employment? Who qualified these employments? Who qualified these salaries? That for me is disappointing. The superintendent is an employee, but the board, they protect the interests of the taxpayers. They were voted in by the people. It is their job. There are people out there saying, you should be a cheerleader to the superintendent. No, there is a reason why the Constitution creates a structure of the board where the superintendent reports to the board. The superintendent is the only employee who reports to the board. The board is the boss, and that is something which there is absolutely no doubt about this. There has to be zero doubt about this. People out there saying, oh, you need to work. Yes, but the fact of the matter is that I don't blame the superintendent alone on this. Yes, she admitted. It's her own words, right? It's not my words. It's her own words that she made a mistake. I'm a board member. I question the board members of the last 3 years who went to sleep, who were absent. That's where the problem is. Because you have a role to play. Your job is to exercise oversight, and you fail the people of Jersey City. Not just in this, in many other things. And that's what is upsetting for me. And today when this board actually stands up and actually plays its role, there are people out there questioning, oh, why are you doing that? You know what? We're doing our job. That's what we're doing. When you didn't do your job as board members, we are doing our job today. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're supposed to be doing.
So what do you say to the naysayers that are intimating, and actually some of them are just saying it outright, that this was simply to send a message to the superintendent since these were some of the people that she recommended or wanted hired?
There's nothing about the superintendent and I have a great relationship. When I was vice president, I met her every month. As president, I meet her twice a month. She herself is on the record saying she has spoken to me and had more meetings with me than any other past board president or board member. And I have a great relationship with her. But as folks like to say, politics is not personal. This is not personal. We're doing our job. The mechanics is clear, John. The superintendent has to put up people for renewal. The board says yes or no. The board said there are a couple of people with titles not approved by civil service. They were doing job functions with salaries not approved by civil service. Okay? And we are a civil service district. There's a mechanics there to prevent this kind of a situation from happening. If I'm the superintendent, there's a mechanics to prevent me from bringing my cousin in, giving him a title called, Chief Education Officer and paying him $150,000 salary. That's the law. That's why we have that law. Okay, that's precisely the purpose of having civil service, because and remember, understand one thing. There are only 11 or 12 school districts with civil service. The remaining school districts are not bound by the civil service laws. We are bound by civil service. There are people who don't understand this concept. Now, in the last 4 days, I have found out that apparently there was an HR audit done of the school district 5 years ago. This exact problem that we are talking about, where there are employees working in the school district with non-certification or non-civil service title, it was pointed out in an HR audit 5 years ago, but nobody took action. And I'm not going to question the superintendent. My only question is, what were the board members doing? What were the board presidents and vice president of that time doing? Apparently there's a 34-page HR audit report, okay, that exists out there, and one page was dedicated just to this issue that the board dealt with last Friday. Nobody has told me. I found out myself because one of the folks who knew about this confidentially reached out to me. This is this whole culture of cover-up, this whole culture of not pretending that the board doesn't exist, or the board pretending that they don't exist. That era is over. And there is a reason why people come out in thousands and vote for board members, so that board members can do their job, which is policy, planning and oversight. And unfortunately in Jersey City, board members have taken a back kind of vacation, and they've said, we want to be cheerleaders. Yeah, you can be cheerleaders. There are different avenues to be cheerleaders. You can go to football, you can go to baseball, you can be cheerleaders.
Yes, I've been disappointing.
Yes, so...
Okay, fair enough. So I'm glad to get your perspective on that, and I would love to see that audit report when it's available. But
I'm going to send it to you the moment I get it.
Okay.
I'll give you the opportunity to break it.
All right, that sounds great.
Yeah.
So let's move away from the board for just a minute here. So obviously you're also a committee man, local Democratic committee man.
Yes, very proudly so. Yeah, District 831. Yeah.
Okay. And as many people watching know, you supported State Senator and Union City Mayor Brian Stack to be the chair of the county Dems. Obviously, it didn't work out. Your colleague on the board, Amy DeGees, bested him. So any regrets about that endorsement?
No, I stand by that decision. I still believe that Senator Stack, with his experience as a senator and as a Union City mayor, and with his very vast constituent service experience, would have been the best, HCDO chairperson in a time where the Democratic Party identity and future is at stake. And when people talk about more of the old, which is what we saw in 2016, which is why we have this clown as a president today, that status quo has to be challenged, And when I offered my I'm at the bottom of the totem pole. I'm a school board member, okay?
Yeah.
And I'm a committee man in a small district. And when I found out that Senator Stack was running, I was ecstatic. I said, this is the revitalization of the 8th CDO party. People call it the 8th DEDO, whatever they call it. Yeah. So I said, okay, this is probably the undeading of the 8th CDO. I didn't know Amy DeGis was running. I found out Amy DeGis was running from the newspaper. By the time I found out she was running, I've already given my support to Senator Stack. And I had a private conversation with Amy, and I told her, listen, we are board members, we respect each other, but that's a different venue, that's a different setting. So, no disrespect to either of us. And I think she's, an adult. She's mature enough to understand the distinction. And I think, while this was going on, when I had put my strong support for Senator Stack and putting out mailers for him and writing an opinion piece for him, our vice president was traveling, and I had Amy sit in as the vice president of the board for over 2 meetings. So these are 2 completely distinct, different venues, and I think one should not confuse between the 2 things.
Okay, that seems to be a pretty reasonable perspective.
Yeah.
Now, looking ahead to 2019 and beyond, there's always rumors about you, running for council or state assembly or freeholder, or something else.
There's always rumors about me, John. People like to talk about me. What can I say?
Yeah.
I'm loved by all, I guess. There are a few who are obsessed. I know that. But I take that with I'm concerned about that level of obsession that a few people have out there, and I think whom we're talking about. But other than that, I think by and large, when 18,073 people vote for you, the spotlight is on you, And as vice president, I think on the board for 12 months, we did some really good stuff. We created RFPs, review of the board, which never happened before. We started the mechanics and the process for the forensic audit. As president, I've opened up the meeting in the public forum. People are watching the meeting on Facebook. We have thousands of people who know now what's happening in the school board meeting. We took the meeting to the south side of the city. We are allowing people to register to speak as of the day. Earlier, every mechanism was in place to try and dissuade people from participating. We've gone in the opposite extreme. I don't know if you know this, but this board was once sued by the ACLU because of trying to prevent public participation. So that's the history of...
That wasn't that long ago, right?
Yeah,
2012 maybe?
Yeah. So that is the history that we inherited. So we're trying to go to the other extreme and trying to make people participate. And we settled the labor contract when people said send it to an arbitrator. They told never in the history has Jersey City ever settled a labor contract without going to arbitration. We settled that contract. They said don't do this health insurance thing. It's a disaster. We did it. We saved $15 million. They said we should lay off 450 people to balance the budget. We dug deep. We passed 18 resolutions, which a few folks out there, are very unhappy about. And I'll tell you what those 18 resolutions are. Every January, when the board assembles, John, 1/3 of the board is new. The 6 are old. There's a bunch of resolutions that are rammed through in the first reorg meeting, which I find very weird because 3 of the board members are not even sworn in, and they're expected to know what those resolutions are. Now, one of those resolutions that they passed in the January meeting, which, if you remember, when we got inaugurated this year, we pushed all those resolutions to the second meeting.
Yeah.
One of the resolutions, what they do, which they have done for many years, is the board adopts what is called as a state vendor list. Now, what this means is that the administration can give out contracts to those state-approved vendors without a bidding process, and it doesn't come to the board. For at least several years now, ever since the board started voting on these things, new boards and successive new boards have adopted state vendors without knowing what the ramifications are. And we now know that millions of dollars in open purchase orders have been given to these state vendors, and the board never knew about this because they already approved the process. It never comes back to you as a bid. So we basically saw all of those, reviewed those resolutions in place, which basically were designed to take the board away from the decision making. Okay?
Yeah.
They were, like, for example, the superintendent can pay bills between, we're not talking about essential bills, we're talking about anything. It's more the board is relegated to a role of a ratifying force rather than a approving force. So we passed 18 board resolutions to bring about accountability, to ensure the board plays the role that it's supposed to play. And a legal counsel that we are working with on a related subject who looked at these resolutions said, this alone is enough to show to the outside world how serious you are about fiscal discipline and tightness of running the operation.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm aware that you take the role as board president quite seriously, and yeah, I know you're trying to make strides for the district. But to my actual question, can you tell me with confidence that in 2019 you're seeking re-election to the Board of Education and no plans for higher office at this time?
Absolutely, John. I've been in this same chair many times when you've asked me this, and I've told you I'm running for re-election to the board because I think you need 6 to 9 years on the board to be able to really, achieve significant things. Like I look up to folks like Sue Mack and Marilyn Roman and Angel Valentine who've been on the board for many years, or in excess of 10 years, and you can see the wealth of knowledge that exists in them. I also talked to a lot of former board members who've been on the board for 3 years and 6 years. I can see the contrast between these guys. I love all of them, and that's what I want to do. And but I'm also a very patriotic American, and I love our nation, and I'm very concerned about where we are right now. So if there is a need to run for something where the people believe that I'm needed in something, which I think is very unlikely at this point, because I think my real need is in the board, and I've been able to create with the board as vice president, with the rest of the board members. I think we've been able to effectuate a lot of significant changes, and we've been able to see good progress. We've been able to deal with crises. We've been able to protect the servicing the educational needs of our 30,000 children. So my primary interest is here at this point. And frankly, I think I've gained a lot of knowledge in this domain, and I don't want to squander this by, for example, people spoke about city council. It's no use, because there's no domain transfer for me. Whatever experience I gain here, 3 years or 6 years, there's no contiguous transfer into the city council. If one day I'm called to serve in the city council, I'll do it. I'll be honored to do it. But the point is that the experience that I'm getting here, there's some that I can take, but there's not a comprehensive transfer. Being in a finance professional, I'm a big believer in audit trail. And I think that's what I want to, think. So to answer your question, long question, short answer, no, I'm running for Board of Ed next year.
Got it. And finally, Sudhan, let's part on this note. There was a case in Hudson County Superior Court where some lawyers were alleging that you didn't pay some of your bills. But my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that matter has been settled?
One matter has been settled, and the other matter is ongoing at this point of time.
Can you tell me anything about the one that's concluded?
My position on this from the very beginning, as you know, John, is that it deals with my personal life, and in fact, these cases were a result of certain folks who didn't like what I was doing on the board, and I've shared with you those details personally. And I think these cases were brought or foisted on me to try and kneecap my agenda in the board, and folks who know me know that those kind of things only motivate me to fight more, So if anything, it had the reverse effects. But since it really involves custody of my, minor child and all that, I really don't want to get into details. But the good news is that one of them is behind me, and I'm hoping to, we'll see what the outcome of the other one is. But it's process that's going on, so we have to respect the process.
Okay, I could respect that as well. Yeah. Sudhan, always a pleasure.
Thank you, John. Thanks a lot.
Never short on words. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your long holiday weekend.
Have a good summer, guys. Take care. Safe travels.